I was just sitting there thinking about the ceremony that's upcoming for Thomas Hill Macon at Magnolia Cemetery this February 28th. And I just thought I would kind of summarize, I guess, what is known about Thomas Macon and maybe what I think about him. He was born in 1842 in Pickens County, Alabama, to Thomas Woodward Macon, and we don't know who his mother was, but we do know that she was probably around 20 years old as she shows up on the 1840 census. Thomas's mother died sometime before 1851, or sometime prior to Christmas 1851, because Thomas Woodward Macon moved the family to Mobile, and he remarried to a woman named Margaret Ann Moore. And the kids that they had, well, they had several kids, too many for me to mention here. But the brother of Thomas Woodward, the brother of Thomas Hill Macon, the one that I know the most about was William Woodward Macon. And thankfully, I'm glad that I found some of his descendants on here. They've helped with the research. Thomas was about 19 years old when he enlisted in the Confederate Army, 12th Alabama Infantry, Company A, as a private. He was in a few big battles like Chancellorsville and Gettysburg and some things like that. His records show he was taken prisoner at Chancellorsville, and then apparently he was released. And shortly after that, at Gettysburg, July 3rd, 1863, he was wounded in the left arm. He was taken prisoner, actually, and sent to a prison hospital in New York, where his left arm was cut off. He was in the war for the full duration, all the way up until the surrender at Appomattox Courthouse. So somehow he got home to Mobile, and this is where it gets kind of interesting. Even more interesting. His girl that he had been with before he left, her name was Cecilia Ursula Rose Gale. She had been about 14, I think, at the time, and she had said that she would wait on him after he got home from the war, and they would get married. Well, he got home, and he didn't have an arm, and apparently this made her change her mind about marriage. But her father, Lewis, got her to go and see him, and she changed her mind, and they were married for just over 20 years. They were married November 21st, I think it was November 21st, 1865. They had 13 kids, and some of them are buried up at Magnolia Cemetery, along where they are, including Mamu, which is Emily Macon, my grandma's grandma. And I'm very fortunate to have found Thomas Macon's death certificate, which was not required in Alabama until 1908. He died of phthisis, as it was called back in the old days, in 1886. It was what we would call tuberculosis. I had to look that up. April 28th, he died April 28th, 1886, and as far as we know, there wasn't anything placed on the grave because nobody had any knowledge of where he was buried at. Which, curiously enough, when I went up to the office of the cemetery, they had no record of his burial, but later on, upon looking at the books at the library, they did have his burial record in there. So it's very interesting how, I guess, some things are just disorganized. Uh, but anyway, I had the application put in for his marker, and it was granted back in 2012. So Thomas Macon finally has the marker that he needed. I think it's important for us to do things like this. And his wife Cecilia was also pretty interesting. She was born in Bala Battery, August 20th, 1847, and her mother was Sophie Artemis Beausarge. She married Louis Gale in 1845. Sometime in, I want to say December 3rd, 1845. Well, Sophie died in 1852, and she is buried along with, I'm assuming, Louis and the cemetery down in, the first cemetery in Bala Battery, the one that is now underwater. And from what I've seen in the records, my great-great-great-grandmother Cecilia Macon, she worked in an oyster. She worked for an oyster company sometime in the early 1890s or maybe late 1890s, and they moved around quite a bit. And the thing is, I remember talking to my grandmother, and she told me that her mama used to tell her that they were kin to people in Bala Battery, but we really didn't know how on that part of her family. So when I started doing the research on this line of the family, the state archives in Montgomery sent me a bunch of stuff, and I was looking through it, and all of a sudden I saw this marriage license, and it showed where Louis Gale married Sophie Beausarge. And I was like, oh wow, so the Beausarge family is here in this line too. And my grandmother nobody in the family had any knowledge about it, so it was pretty interesting. But anyway, February 28th, 2015, there will be a Civil War memorial in memory of Thomas Hill Macon. I would go so far to say that he was a hero of the Confederacy. He certainly went through a great deal of torment, I should say. Having his left arm cut off, and then going to one of the worst prisons. I believe it was one of the worst prisons in the Union. It was somewhere up in New York. But anyway, if anybody wants to attend it, please feel free. I don't know the precise time yet. I think it's going to be around noon at Magnolia Cemetery. It's going to be a full dress deal. The people who do it are going to be in full uniform. There's going to be a cannon. So please, especially if you're any way descended from that part of the family, please feel free to come. We sure want you there.